what they call urban development zones. And this is predominantly known as UDZ. So we are going to use that term quite a lot as we go ahead, so you know at least what it is. And UDZ comes in with a lot of tax incentives, a lot of tax incentives. And again, our idea is to create awareness whilst we are on this one. And between myself and Lebo, we are always educating ourselves between the two of us in the stuff that we are reading. And this is the goal. If you know something about UDZ that we don't know, that we haven't spoken about it, in the comments below, you can drop that in. If you have done anything in the UDZ, big up to you. How is that working for you? That's the other question that I would ask you. But I want to jump in to talk about it. Urban Development Zone. Lebo, what is it? Boom, boom. How's it going? It is I, your boy again, with my co-host, Lebo Hang, and you know that when the two boys are in the house, what we're talking about, and everything and anything around property, but property and tax. So welcome aboard. My name is TJ, Taurai Jack, and I do property every day, and I do this in 4 cities, Durban, Pretoria, Cape Town, and I smell Bloemfontein coming. And yeah. Lebo, how's it going? Welcome aboard, brother.
I'm all right. How are you, TJ? How are you doing?
No, I'm surviving, man. I'm surviving.
Good stuff.
Everyone that I ask how you doing, they're all like, you know, these COVID times, you know.
Yeah, I've always, you know, my mentor always says you can either find a solution or find an excuse. So you depending on which side of the coin you want to fall in. So I'd rather focus on solutions, things that I can control, than those that I don't have control over.
Right. So the question I want to ask you, Lebo, before we jump into today, during COVID, are you slowing down? Are you putting pressure? Are you just doing what you can?
I am, in fact, instead of slowing down, I'm putting so much pressure. I've been, my growth since the beginning in terms of planning and projects that are in the pipeline, since the beginning of COVID, it has grown massively as compared to prior to lockdown. Prior to lockdown, we just, you know, doing. We thought we had time, we had control over things. So COVID has taught us that, you know, there's certain things that are out of control and certain things that you can't predict. So do all you can while you can. So hence I'm putting so much pressure at this moment.
100%. So I think my tagline on this one is that never be idle, be taking active at any given time. So put action into something and make sure that you're improving your life. And for some of you that, yeah, go ahead, Lebo.
I'm saying 100%. No, I agree with you.
Awesome stuff. For some of you that don't know us and you've never been here before, and you're wondering, you know, what are these two clowns talking about? Well, I do property 100% of my time, and I left my employment a couple of years ago to chase the dream of real estate. And I've got a business now, and that business got partners. I do properties. I do affordable accommodation and student accommodation in 2 cities. And I enjoy talking about what I do so that we can increase awareness of what can be done, reaching your financial goals in terms of what you're doing. By no means am I a financial advisor. No, I'm not. I talk about what I do. If you are one of those people who are wanting to do what I do, copy and paste, hey, this is what we do. And Lebo, I bumped up into Lebo, and he's a tax practitioner by profession. But let me not steal your thunder. Introduce yourself, Lebo.
Hi guys, my name is Lebogang Lewipi. I am a property investor. I run property full time as well. I wake up to do property investment and I chase deals on a daily basis. But I'm more on a development side than on the other strategies of property. I also do, sometimes I'll do a flip here and there. I'll sometimes do other deals, but mainly I do property development and investment. I'm a business accountant by profession, and I have the highest qualification that I have is an honors in taxation. Hence, I've practiced for a couple of years, a few years before I quit my job a few years ago to also, chase a dream of being a property developer. I develop mostly affordable, comfortable, lifestyle um, accommodation in and around townships, mainly. But we also do like your medium, medium to high end markets developments. So that's what I've been doing. That's what I wake up to do every single day.
Awesome stuff. Now that you know who we are, let's jump on to talk about the topic for today. And Lebo and I, we've been talking about what they call urban development zones. Urban development zones. And this is predominantly known as UDZ. So we are going to use that term quite a lot as we go ahead. So you know at least what it is. And UDZ falls in, it comes in with a lot of tax incentives. A lot of tax incentives. And again, our idea is to create awareness whilst we are on this one. And between myself and Lebo, we are always educating ourselves between the two of us in the stuff that we are reading. And this is the goal. If you know something about UDZ that we don't know, that we haven't spoken about it, in the comments below, you can drop that in. If you have done anything in the UDZ, big up to you. How is that working for you? That's the other question that I would ask you. But I want to jump in to talk about it. Urban development zone. Lebo, what is it?
And urban development zones, it's a section, it's section 13 quad that was introduced to address the issue of urban decay within inner cities and to maintain the existing infrastructure while encouraging investors or investment in certain property. This section provides an accelerated depreciation allowance on cost of building erected, added to or extended or improved, and in which on which they are within the urban development zones. So they are in these properties are in the inner cities, to encourage investors and investment in these type of properties. To ensure that our cities they maintain, and they continuously improve as well.
Right. So Lebo has just gone higher grade because I was like listening to him. I'm like, oh, what is Lebo talking about? Let me just dissect it a little bit lower for a guy like me. Right. So what Lebo was saying, I think in a nutshell, Lebo, when I was looking at this thing of UTZ, I was like, what is it? Is it a government thing? Is it not a government thing? And when you are in property, we're always talking about that you can become the government's partner. And
Yes.
from a tax perspective, this is where the partnership actually comes in, because the government, and I want to say the government here because the government have different offices. We've got the office of the president, with the entire cabinet. They look after the entire country, right? And then soon after that, you've got the provincial offices, and then thereafter, you've got the town offices. And what we are talking about here, urban development, is around a particular town. Is that so, Lebo?
100%.
Right. So wherever you are, whether you are Cape Town, Durban, Johannesburg, whatever town you are, there is a form of UDZ being deployed. If you don't know that it's there, don't say, this is not happening in my city. Go and find out, right?
Yes,
so
yes.
so I'm going to give you examples. Lebo and I, we are Gauteng based, and for Johannesburg, urban development, we call it the Freedom Corridor, right? City of Johannesburg have called it the Freedom Corridor, and there is a big document around it. And Freedom Corridor kind of like starts from Johannesburg West, Westdene. It goes all the way just outside Johannesburg, Rosettenville areas. It cuts all the way to the airport, Kempton Park, and then it comes back again a little bit closer into Randburg, and then again into Westdene. So that whole circle is what they call the urban development zone. And for some people, you know that I'm in Cape Town, so I also have some interest there. I think they call it the Fortrekker urban development. And I am positive that right now they just did an introduction of other areas in Fortrekker Road Corridor, and places like Maitland, Paro. I think I'm leaving the third one. I think it's Oakdale. Yes, that's also now been included in the UDZ in Cape Town. In Durban, the other areas that I know, it's literally in and around town. Durban town. So you're talking like Berea, Musgrave, all of those areas. But now that you understand those areas, the point that I was trying to make is that with what Lebo said, those places have been seen to decay. What do we mean by decay? Places that you don't want to go to because you're thinking that you can get robbed. That's an easy explanation.
That's the easy way to explain it.
Yeah, and with those places, you're saying, I don't want to go there. So traditionally, these are old neighborhoods. And what the town is basically saying with the mayor, the urban development is really driven from the mayor's office,
100%, yes.
Right. So the mayor is now saying, hey, how can we turn around our cities? And the government doesn't have the money, obviously, to plow all of the money. Or should I say, not that they don't have the money, but it just doesn't make sense for the government to just plow all of their money in there when they can partner up with other people. And the partnership then comes in with the incentives of tax. Yes. And that's what we want to then jump into. So I hope it makes sense. Did I leave something there, Lebo?
I think also, just to add on what you said, TJ, I think it also from a government perspective, it also makes sense from the management point of view, to partner with private individuals in order for them, to develop these buildings that are in the city, to erect new buildings. So from a management point of view, because a private investor has put skin in the game, has put their money, their investment, so they are most likely going to take care of their investment to ensure that it continues to appreciate in value and it maintains a certain standard. So in that way, that means that the government says so it fits to say, look, let's partner with private investors so that they can be the ones that are developing. And then as a result, in order for us to encourage them to keep on doing so, let's give them an incentive, for their effort and for their investment.
Good. So what kind of tax benefits do we have here, Lebo, for UDZ? Is it something that you go and you buy a building or you buy a property, whatever property it is? And by the way, we're not just talking about big buildings here, because we're using the term loosely, building. We're talking of a property. It can be a house, actually. There's many houses in those areas. Yes. It could be a block of flats, whatever the case could be. You could be buying a small unit, a 2-bed, 1-bath in a block of flats. All of this, for as long as it is within that jurisdiction, you benefit from there. Now, Lebo, are these benefits upfront, or are they subject to?
They are subject to things like your building requirements, your urban development requirements, your trade requirements, your owner requirement, and also the date requirement that these buildings were developed, erected, or extended.
Right.
So this is based on certain requirements that the government has put in place.
Okay. So Lebo, if we're talking about that, there are certain requirements, and I'm sitting in Bloemfontein, for instance,
Yes.
right? What is my role as a property investor for me to benefit from the incentives that are going to come up with the UDZ in Bloemfontein? I've just heard this now. What are my steps so that I can benefit from it?
I think, like I always say on all of our podcasts,
Yeah.
or videos, is that you always have to seek relevant information from the relevant party, the person that is more qualified to give you advice.
Yeah.
For instance, I think your best bet will be your tax practitioner, because they would know more in details, in depth of which are these requirements, and how best you can become eligible at claiming these deductions, if all the following requirements are complied by, the building requirements, the UDZ requirements, the trade requirements, the owner requirements, and the date requirement. Or you can just approach your local municipality council, talk to the town planner. They'll be the one. They'll be the relevant people to guide you accordingly as well.
100%. So I want to stress the fact that for every town, generally all of the towns, they have a website.
Yes.
And you can literally jump onto that website. If you're sitting in Durban and you've got interest in Bloem or wherever the city is, you can literally jump onto their website. They normally have all these documents that they've got uploaded there. Your first step is really to just understand what they're talking about. What is that their UDZ, requirements, and which boundaries. And then for me, the next thing is that now I understand those documents, I can actually now start jumping into finding deals intentionally in those areas, because now I know that the dates are still within the 2020, right? It doesn't make sense to go and jump into a UDZ, and actually the UDZ was cut off last year. So what does that mean, right? So I think those are kind of like the baby steps, together with visiting a town planner, like Lebo said, speaking through now to your tax practitioner, and so on. But Lebo, let's talk about it.
Yes.
And let's talk about in a point of, I've got R1 million. I always want to give my examples with a round figure, because calculations for us, it's a bit of a challenge,
Yes.
Right. So I've got R1 million, and when you've got R1 million, and give us an example where and how you can benefit by utilizing your R1 million. And let's assume this R1 million, potentially you have 800,000 that's debt that you're going to borrow, and 200,000 that is your own money, and you're going to buy something, whether it is a block of flats or whatever it is. We're not saying that that's the prices. We're giving scenarios so that we can see how can you benefit from a UDZ as an example.
So there are costs that can be claimed from your development, depending on the position, on your position as a developer. And there are also guidelines as to how you can treat these purchases, from developers as well, and the amounts that can be deducted. It all goes back to your position as a developer. So there are amounts that can be deducted from your purchase amount or your cost. how improvements of, to be the to their buildings, that there's a different ways of dealing with, improvements. Um, and also, and if you're building on the land that is owned by third parties as well, so it's treated differently, as depending on your position as a developer. So as if you are developing from, just an investor's perspective, and you are, doing it from a personal perspective, so it's treated differently from, when you are doing it from a company's perspective. So depending on the position that you're sitting at, so these costs are treated differently. Hence, I'd always, would just drop in the comments using an example of 1 million and one scenario, one position, to elaborate as to what are the possible deductions that you can get from these incentives.
Right. So in a nutshell, Lebo, what you're saying here, if I understood you correctly, right, without saying to me, no, TJ, I can't give you a straightforward answer. You have actually just walked through a multiple array of examples where if you are in a certain position, the taxman is going to look at you differently.
Yes. 100%.
If you're doing a certain strategy, again, the taxman is going to look at you differently.
Yes.
But in a nutshell, the documents that we were talking about, like for instance, I was on the SARS website the other day, and it's quite clear in terms of if you're in whatever position, what can you deduct from year 1 up to year number 5. So it's very, very clear on what you can do, right?
Yes. Yes.
And we are advocates of whatever that you're trying to do, go and try to find out how do you do it, right?
Yes, 100%.
And that's what we're doing here. So whatever city that you're in, whatever money that you're going to want to spend, just jump in and do the research first a little bit before you execute. But the next question that I want to ask, Lebo, in our conversation is that now that we know that there are these tax incentives, right?
Yes.
People now know that they can go to SARS websites, they can go to the municipality websites. When these tax incentives are being distributed, the other day someone says to me, so are you saying that the government will give me money to do my development if I'm to do it? Or does it mean that these deductibles, they are going to give me money maybe next year or the other time? How do these incentives work?
So the UGZ tax incentives, so in terms of the 2020 budget announcements, it has extended for another year, from the 31st of March 2020 to the 31st of March 2021. Right. So within this text year, that's where you have an extension for these incentives. And, these are deductions, these are tax deductions from your developments that, you can be able to claim from your tax submissions. So it does not mean that the government would say, hey, here's R1 million, go develop in the inner city. No, they say to you, go develop, come back and claim from us.
Right. So when you are claiming back, which means that you are spending for this year, and I almost want to speak to the next point, Lebo, because I think for a lot of us, this is where we get stuck. Or should I say, this is where the problem comes. We are great at doing, but we are not good at documenting. Right. So there we have gone out now. We built, and I was using my bra or my cousin's uncle and all of those things. And we were just passing money in between. Now the building is standing there, right? And now I've just heard, I can claim back some of that money now.
Yes.
How best do you work around that? And I don't want us to talk about solutioning this individual, I'm wanting us to talk about doing it the right way, the right time. You know,
All right.
for the first time.
So, yeah, so first thing first, you need to always keep record of all your transactions.
Right.
So keep record of all your source documents. Your source documents mean your bank statements, your your withdrawals, your petty cash, the receipts that you get from your your suppliers, and the invoices from your suppliers as well. So you keep all those records and you document them. You make them into one file. You can give it to a bookkeeper. They'll be the ones to know how to account for those expenses. Or you can just give it to a tax practitioner. When they do in the return, they'll know how to account for those expenses and which ones are eligible to claim and which ones are not allowed to claim. So they can guide you accordingly. So I'd advise that, the first thing first, before you start even with the development, go consult with the tax practitioner. Then they will tell you exactly what you need to keep, which records you need to keep, and how to keep them to make it easier for them and also cheaper for you when they're doing the actual returns and submissions.
So, Lebo, we are always talking about having a team of people that
Yes.
are working with you. And the more we engage around this tax thing, I am getting more comfortable to say that tax is a good thing.
It is. It is. It is to a certain extent.
Right.
Yes.
However, it is a good thing only if you're playing within the system,
Yes.
or if you're playing the cards to how it's dictated. And
Yes.
and I'm getting more comfortable every day. We're talking, and I'm getting comfortable with the fact that in my team, if I don't have a bookkeeper, I like I've got no words for it.
I mean, they are called bookkeepers for a reason. They must be able to keep your books
Right.
in order. So if you don't have a bookkeeper, you're going to struggle when it comes to accounting for every single cent that has went out of your account. So if you were to be audited by SARS, you might find yourself on the wrong side of SARS, whereby you'll be owing SARS the money that you shouldn't be, because mainly because there was R1 million that went through your bank account and you are unable to account for it. Then they would say this is money and this is profit that you would have made. So you had to pay us, tax on this R1 million, where else you might have used that for eligible expenses of the business, of which are tax deductible. But because you didn't keep record, now you might find yourself on the wrong side of the law. So it's very important to have to get yourself a bookkeeper, someone who will be able to account for every cent that goes in and out of your account. And it makes it easier for when you pass the book to your tax practitioner to maximize on your tax allowables or tax deductibles. It will make it easier for him to advise, because there will be a record to advise on. So he won't be just advising blindly and thumb sucking. Where's the wind blowing? He will be able to guide you accordingly, because you would have something to reference from, to say, look, you spend 1, 2, 3, and according to SARS, 1, 2, 3 expenses are allowed to be deducted. So in this case, because you have received R1 million, you've spent 800,000, so you are only going to pay a bit of tax on 200,000 instead of on the whole R1 million.
Nice. Lebo, I want to conclude on this UDZ thing. And I almost want to say the question that I'm going to ask is that I know from an accounting perspective, there's different offices or officer from an accounting perspective. So The bottom one being the bookkeeper, then you jump onto the accountant, and then, you know, it rise up. And
Yes.
the question that I want to ask is, amongst the officers within the accounting space, and
Yes.
for you to be able to execute your claims nicely. So I've identified a project and I want to go in there. But before I do that, how best can I make sure that from an accounting perspective, my offices within those, I've got the right power team, right? So
Mhm.
which offices do I need and at what junction up until I actually submit something and I reap the benefit of the UTZ?
So the good thing, you know, there's a simplest way or shortcut to this whole officers. So if you get yourself a
Yeah.
CA is more qualified to do everything from your bookkeeping up to your tax submissions,
How about
because
they're expensive?
if you want to cut corners, then you probably, because you'd probably have to then you know, have a bookkeeper that would do your books from you know, your entry up to your trial balance. And then from trial balance, you can take your trial balance and give it to a business accountant or a professional accountant or a chartered accountant who will do your financials. Then obviously they are also more qualified to also um, advise you in terms of taxes. However, if you want more specialized, you know, officer in terms of your taxes to maximize to the last cent, my mentor always says you don't have to leave two rent lying on the table. So if you want to maximize to get even the last cent from your tax deductibles, then you can only then you can now consult a tax practitioner because they know the tax laws like the back of their hands. So
Right.
that's the highest officer that you can consult.
Right. So in a nutshell, Lebo, what you're saying here is um, you can deploy your wife to be the bookkeeper,
Yes.
um, and you can deploy your cousin to be the accountant, and and this is a reality, Lebo. I mean, this happens every day in our lives. You know, you ask the
Yes.
question, so who's doing your books? And say, my wife is doing the books. And like, is your wife a bookkeeper? No, she's not. So how is she doing your bookkeeping then? Yeah,
Mhm.
she knows. She's on top of the things, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and 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 I'm glad that I never experienced that. Actually, my wife would just have told me, like, bruh, nah, go away. Um, but also the fact that sometimes we want to cut corners, and this is where my point is driving to, where we want to be in business, we want to reap the benefits, we want to maximize the profits, but then we utilize the wrong individuals, the people that are not qualified to be doing those things, and yet we want to reap the benefits. And what you're saying here, Lebo, is number one, get a chartered accountant because they can execute everything else. That's your happy place,
Yes, that's your happy place.
right? And you should be paying for the services, by the way,
Of course.
for you to get the right quality that you're looking for, right?
Yes.
Great if your uncle is a chartered accountant, you've got a relationship, but it's always good to actually have someone that you're paying for a service, and maybe your uncle can come in as an advisory if you really like tight, right?
Yes.
That's my thing there. However, if you're running this as like a proper business and you want to maximize everything, you're actually needing to be working with a tax practitioner together with your chartered accountant who's looking after this. If you have grown to be a business like mine, maybe I now have an internal bookkeeper who keep us straight and narrow, and she likes tells me sometimes, Brian, what you're talking doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
And on a weekly basis, she sees transactions going out. She's like, I want these invoices. She hunts me for them.
Yeah, that's a good bookkeeper. You have a good.
Right. So we've now started actually deploying certain systems in the business where, if I make a transaction wherever, Nando's, whatnot, like there and there, I take a snapshot of it. There's different apps that you can utilize and push, it's gone, and she's got it at hand. I don't need to worry about it like a few weeks after, scrounging in your car now, you can't find them. Going to call the service provider, did you give me a receipt? No, yes. Like, I've been there. So, I'm talking here from experience. But I'm glad that we've had this conversation around the UDZ label. Do you recommend that is something that we should be focusing into as property developers, property investors? What's your view around it?
My view around it is you get there's good deals in cities that you can find, and they are quick to sometimes they are quick to refurbish or develop or extend or bring it to the standard that you want it to. And you get to, in that case, you also get to maximize on profit. And I mean, if you get an extra incentive from the government, I mean, why not? So that also cuts you on taxes, because you get what they call an accelerated tax deduction. So meaning that if you were supposed to pay 10%, deduct 10%, you can deduct your 30%, just as an example. So it's accelerated in that way. So if you can get that incentive from the government, I mean, that's a bonus. You are now maximizing on profit. So your profit margins, they go higher than what they would if you were to develop elsewhere.
Yeah. I want to stress the fact that Lebo, you mentioned that it's a good area to go in from a tax incentives. The government is backing you up 100%. It almost feels like it's almost like 300% in terms of what they are going to give you back in terms of claims.
True.
However, I want to stress the fact, because I play around the city. So I don't play in the city. I play around the city. Yeah. And for me, I see good deals. The further you are in the city, the more muscle you need.
Yes, true.
And when I'm saying muscle here, what am I talking about? From a finance perspective, from a maintenance perspective, from a management perspective, you need a stronger arm, because those buildings, they've been decaying for a reason. There's a reason why they decayed, right? There's a reason why we are all scared to go into those areas. Now you are saying, I want to put my gold in there, because remember, your property is your gold, right? And it's your investment. And you are saying that I want to reap the benefits out of it. Other people are running away from it, and you are saying, nah, let me go in. So do you have the right muscle? That's the question that we need to be asking ourselves. Yes, the UTZ, there's lots of incentives around it. I like them. So for instance, for me in Cape Town, Cape Town is cool because Paro, I enjoy playing into it. Maitland, not really. In Johannesburg, I am not in the heart of CBD. I'm still a little bit scared. So yeah, when I go into CBD, I'm like, no cell phone, no watch, no nothing. I'm still that guy. But that's just from me perspective of what happened to me when I was in the inner city. But I can also see a lot of improvements happening as I drive in and out of towns, which also gives me comfort some days. But Lebo, from a perspective of a management perspective, because you also do management on your own buildings, right?
Yes.
From an inner city perspective, with what you see, what you hear, versus where you are playing, because most of your developments, kind of like in the townships, which is more relaxed, more homely, and some of your other developments are also, they're not in towns, they are other in like middle class neighborhoods.
Yes, yes.
What it almost feels like this thing here, you have found your niche and you're playing within your niche. And there's other people that are heavily playing in the inner city niche, and they're happy to play with it. What's your
100%.
comment around finding your own niche and running on your niche?
I think, I believe in focusing on and mastering one or two things instead of, being a jack of all trades and master of none.
Yeah.
So I'd rather, master one thing or two things,
Right.
than to be average all out. So if you average all out, then you're not getting much ahead. You can't really dominate your space if you are playing on an average basis. But if you want to dominate and make a difference, and also know exactly what you're doing, like the back of your hand, then
Yeah.
I would say that find your niche, stick to it, and play in your niche.
Awesome stuff. I like that. And for anyone else who's struggling, they're doing flips, they're doing multi-lets, they're doing buildings, well, you're all over. There's one book that I'd like you to read. That book is called The One Thing. I've forgotten the author, but in the comments, I'll put it in. The One Thing is, it is a good book that I read a couple of months ago. It's a good read. An American guy wrote that book. And I've learned quite a bit on it. And it all talks about, doing the one thing so that you become a specialist in it. Lebo, it's been great hanging out with you, brother. And let's do it again, same time, same time.
Cheers.
Cheers, cheers. God bless. Bye.